Well, a very good morning yet again for the people that have just joined us, and for those who, of course, are continuously rolling with us. It is still the daybreak, and this is time for the topical discussion, where we get to dive into the biggest topics in the nation, try to break them down, give them more perspective, give them more understanding, and of course, that is breaking them down for you with the people that we normally host here on the daybreak each and every morning. That is 8 to 9 a.m. for the topical discussion. Now, today we speak matters of the Oyam North by-election, and this is a seat that did fall vacant earlier on this year in March after the death of the Member of Parliament in there, that is Colonel Charles Engola, who is now the late, and of course after being gunned down by the private Sabit Wilson, who was of course a bodyguard to the former Minister for Labour, Gender and Social Development in state. Now, when we speak matters of the by-election, the election will be held on Thursday this week. It is just one day to the election. Today is a Tuesday, and President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni is expected to be campaigning for the NRM candidate. And looking at some of the candidates in there, we have Dr. Eunice Apio coming in from the Uganda People's Congress, UPC. Then we have Sam Engola Okello coming in from the National Resistance Movement Party. Then we have Newton Okello from the Forum for Democratic Change Party, FDC. And last, we have Okello Daniel coming in from the National Unity Platform Party. Now, when you look at the population or the registered voters in Oyam North, they total to 50,000 voters, and of course that is out of a population of 160,624 people that do live in all the vicinity of Oyam. Now, of course, that does mean that literally it is quite a small population that is registered and eligible to vote. Now, we'll be diving into the discussion in just a few seconds, and I'd like to introduce my guest in studio. And good morning, Mr. Otim.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers. Thank you for hosting me today. I'm more than delighted to be here with the BTM family.
Okay. Mr. Otim, would like to, of course, give more perspective, try to discuss the nitty-gritties of this election. And of course, we are discussing this at the back of our minds. We have, and us to have the Wekedea by-election for the LC5 chairperson, which of course the president did write a letter specifically to address issues of the intimidation, the unfairness that was of course espoused in there, where the FDC candidate was raided and money stolen, academic documents taken, and of course that is clamping down on his ability to be able to be nominated. And then of course he did lose the election. So we're discussing this with that in mind. First of all, what do you make of the candidates that are running for the Oyam North seat? What could you, or who would you name to be the key candidate in this election?
Thank you very much, my brother. The issue of Oyam by-election, we should begin looking at two major factors. And that is NRM and then UPC. Okay. And when you look at the candidate of NRM, of course, he has an attachment or rather a link to the late,
Member of Parliament.
Member of Parliament. And of course, the late, you understand how he used to run politics. He was a man of the people. People loved him. And then also for having the young man on board, and then not having any rifts. Of course, you understand in politics there's always divisions and so on. Because I recall that when NRM held the primaries in that very area, we had a split between the lady that contested as independent, I think under UPC, there's that I think Betty also, and then the young man Sam Engola Jr. So of course, NRM having the majority vote, of course, they have been there for some time. They have mobilized. And I want to believe that it is something that NRM is looking forward to winning. But when you're to see and do an assessment, we've seen interactions between UPC and then NRM as a party.
That's true.
And of course, you know those two have always been together.
They say they're in bed together.
Yes. So we have some of the UPCs that have already been even appointed as ministers. So most likely I am putting much weight on NRM to take on the mantle to win that particular seat. Yes.
Why are you, leaving out the Forum for Democratic Change? Why are you leaving out the National Unity Platform Party, which of course yesterday we did see Robert Kyagulanyi, the party president of NUP, sweeping. People were all over as he was campaigning. Why are you putting them out of this election?
This particular election, of course, looking at the northern region, we read the geopolitics of those particular regions. FDC and NUP have always performed within the central, and of course, FDC having, a heavy ground rather in the eastern,
part
region,
of the nation.
Part of the nation, nation. So we much look at what the foundation of some of these parties. NRM has always performed well in northern, region, and then, some areas far to the north. And then we've also seen UPC that has been one of the founding parties. It was founded in Lango sub-region, Oyam being part of Lango. Of course, you understand the geopolitics. You understand how they have always been, how they have always played politics. You see that UPC's solid foundation and ground has always been within Lango sub-region. Now, the competition is between those two. We have UPC and then NRM. Of course, you cannot eliminate UPC. It might be a weak party to you, but when it comes to their, region where they come from, they're united. They speak one language.
And I think that is Dr. Eunice Appiah was, one of the strong candidates in the last elections, because she used to, give a run for the money for the people that she used to contest against. However, particularly, let us look at some of the issues affecting the people of Oyam. How specifically have some of these candidates addressed them? If you've been following up the campaigns, have they really spoken to the problems of Oyam? Because, at my fingertips, I would say education is one of the problems. Yes, it is quite a place that has a lot of literacy levels, but then they are still grappling with, the ratio of the teacher to student number. We have issues of health facilities in there. We do have housing issues because, people living in houses that, sharing shelters with animals. Have these people spoken to some of these challenges?
You see, Oyam County has always faced difficulties. First of all, we begin from one of the longest, civil wars that occurred. That's the LRA. It came and then, particularly affected that region and then Acholi sub-region. But when you are to compare the two regions, that is Acholi and then Lango, you have always seen this kind of intertwined development. When you look at Oyam, particularly as far as social welfare is concerned, that's education and health. Of course, it has always been a hard-to-reach area, but I think last year also when I passed through Oyam, I was very, shocked to see the level of development that is coming, at that rate. And of course, the late has always been advocating for social welfare. It's been advocating for wealth creation, how enticing and then convincing the locals or the natives to take on the government initiatives that have been created in order to, to create wealth. So I want to believe that we as the citizens, or rather as government, NRM, we are advocating for, social. They've always advocated for wealth creation through the PDM, because I've heard them speak about it. And I think people have been registering, good. And then they've also spoken about the Myoga. And then we have the NOSAF that was transferred to that particular, sub-region. So some of these have been helping those people, to pick up from the insurgencies that occurred. Of course, those insurgencies caused a very grave and massive damage. But then having them, join these initiatives that the NRM government is advocating for, I believe that it is a win situation, and with time, development always picks up. It's not a one-day thing, it's not 2 days, but it is a long, time process.
Okay.
Yes.
Then, of course, when you look at, first of all, this is a big issue that has, of course, come up in different by-elections, and I would say it was so much vocalized when it came to the late Speaker of Parliament, that is Jacob Lokoli Olanya, when he died.
Yes.
And of course his son was affronted to come into his place, and of course he did win the election. Has NRM now resorted to politics of ring-fencing positions for different families, and does this really sit well with the population of Uganda, of the country? Does it even sit well with you as a Ugandan?
Issues of family line or bloodlines is not something that just came about, of recent or today. It has been there, previous generations. And of course, you see, when a leader dies, according to African culture, when a leader dies in a certain position of leadership, there's always that room people create and say that, why can't we pick from the family? Let the son take over. Let's help the orphans. And that is how Honorable Jimmy Akena, took over. He said, let's help the orphan. The orphan needs to take over. So we saw Honorable Jimmy Akena come up to today. He's become a formidable, factor in the politics of Uganda and Lango sub-region. We have also seen scenarios where if a formidable, or rather an influential person died in a particular area, the people themselves are the ones who come and say, no, we want the son. We will always follow this particular one. This one can take on the mantle of the father. Let them complete this term, and then the next can be for him to showcase. Yes, and that's how people do. People believe that, one, if a particular candidate or rather leader that has been helping them to try and bridge the gap between them and the government has passed on, then of course within the family I believe there's mentorship. Yes, within the family there is someone that can easily take on the mantle. And now the person is only coming in, first of all, is to help stabilize the family, and then, cut on whatever the father did not complete, because those people know that this particular person could be having the knowledge and the same, direction. The father, or rather the leader too.
What you're trying to say is you're in support of ring fencing these positions.
I'm not in support of ring fencing, but I'm in support of having room for anyone to participate in politics. Although previously I lost my dad. My dad has been a very formidable person in the politics of Kumi district. That is Teso sub-region. But of course, people understand, and many possibly could be, in that very direction that I am aiming for politics. But of course, it is a calculative, kind of
because
initiative.
Mr. Otimwa asked this, you're giving us the narrative of, it is helping the orphans, stabilizing their family. But, this is a position that is, way above families. It is about a constituency. It is about people, service delivery, not only service delivery in a family. And, don't you think that this is something that is going to be spoiling, service delivery, limiting it, trying to, make it a family issue?
One thing I've really failed to understand is how Ugandans or other certain citizens handle politics. Of course, you see, you cannot deviate from the fact that leadership is always something that passes through the lines of families.
Okay.
We have seen that even the previous leaders, if you are to count from most of the leaders that have served in the previous and the present, there's always a connection. That this person particularly served possibly in 1950 something, and the grandson has come to and is also possibly the president of a particular nation. So I believe that Uganda coming up and embracing such a system, of course, that's not everyone's liking, because everyone should be given room to partake on any leadership role. But in this particular situation, we have always seen it is a very term of office for parliamentarians we have lost a number of leaders. And you have seen by-elections come, you know,
And
you've
The
seen the
relatives are
performances.
fronted.
So, first of all, in any elective office, particularly, you know, those, you know, members of, you know, parliamentarians and even presidential, you always see there's that emotion, there's sympathy, there's the emotion of what? If you have been an influential figure within a community or society, people will always take it on you.
But do you think it should be only about emotions? Because, you know, what I'm trying to bring out is service delivery in the country. We need medicine in Oyam. We need, you know, improving the housing facilities in Oyam, how people can live better, a better life, how people can access education in Oyam. And, you know, we're only putting it on emotions. How does this affect the nation?
No, but if you see, if you are to look at, at the previous leadership, I mean, possibly the late, how he handled politics. And then if you have to look at the young man, how he presents himself, and then already he has laid his manifesto, he already has what he's already advocating for, even before he takes over office. You really see that there's competence. The young man is competent enough to, you know, take on the mantle and then deliver.
Mr. Tim,
but you see, this is only 2 years left for
the
term to end. Of course, you understand that he might not be able to accomplish most of the things that were, you know, laid on table by the previous leader. But he will try to stabilize and rather, you know, possibly front a few. We have seen most of them that have come. The son of the late speaker, that's Jacob Olanya. We have seen the son of the late, you know, Honorable Bishop Patrick Okabe.
I've not seen some of those on the floor of Parliament.
Of course, you see, he's standing up and speaking on the floor of Parliament. Some of us that have been so close to Parliament as an institution, you can't just wake up one morning and then you're on that floor. You need to orient yourself. You need to study. You need to know how you're going to.
But they've been in Parliament
for
quite some time.
You see, someone particularly might not be able to speak because is I think barely 2 months old, the new one that just, you know, won elections in Serere County. 2 months or rather 3 months, you know, old in Parliament, possibly is trying to orient himself. But when you interact with him one-on-one, you find a very intelligent man, a competent leader. So I want you to believe that we have to learn, or we have to begin mentoring leaders. Tomorrow you will be a member of Parliament, possibly, or most of us who might meet in that house. So it is something that you have to build from scratch. Those that might inherit, you know, today you might be there for 2, and then, you know, 2026, towards the end, you might fail to, you know, make it in Parliament. It is not a calling of, it's not the calling of the people, but possibly they saw that they tried you and you failed to deliver. So they will pick on another one.
Lastly, on this point, don't you think this does, of course, you know, limit the emergence of better politicians in societies? Because, you know, you look at, for example, the candidates that were coming up, you know, to contest on the NRM ticket, that those that did pass through to go to the party primaries. Don't you think there were better capable leaders than, you know, Sam Ngola Jr.?
Yes, we understand the people that even, you know, laid interest to contest
because
on the NRM ticket. I saw the lady Betty. She's been very, you know, vocal and then consistent in running, you know, even the previous elections. I saw my friend, the former ambassador of the UK, that's Modo, also come on board. He had wanted to contest, but I think he was convinced rather not to take on that step. So there have been very many people that have always wanted to contest. But of course, you know, NRM tries to limit. That's why you see that there's always an open room for independent candidates. And independent candidates win. So if as NRM party, they can't, you know, restructure and then accept people to take on, have that free will for people to go on ground, and then let the public or let the citizen, let the electorate choose their suitable candidates, possibly we might have a problem in 2026. We might have a higher number of independent candidates coming to Parliament other than what? Party affiliations. So we really, as NRM, have to keenly observe and study this. And then I think you also talked about the issue of Bukedia by-election.
Yeah.
Of course, Bukedia by-election, you see the candidate that was rather, you know, manhandled or, you know, roughed. There was that rift. You know, Bukedia as a district has always had difficulties.
Yeah.
As far as, you know,
Elections
political affairs is concerned. Not of recent, but even the previous elections. We have had scenarios where we have different individuals try to ring fence certain positions. And they, you know, for them they have one language, that when they want this particular candidate, of course eventually that particular candidate will be the one to be fronted, and will be the one they will front and fight until they succeed in what they're doing. So of course I highly, as an individual and then someone that advocates for, you know, proper line political systems, I highly condemn the acts that happened in Bukedia district. Of course, having one candidate manhandled and then beaten to that extent, and plus his money taken. Actually, that candidate was not even FDC. He was NRM leaning, and is Honorable Magoro. So, having that particular candidate manhandled, of course, you see, it may leverage the situation right now that we might not feel the effect today. But Bukedia as a district is a very weird, you know, it has a different setting of people.
Mr. Tim,
yes.
When we speak about matters of Bukedia, the president did, of course, as just addressing myself to the letter, just here that the president did write to the leader of the State House Anti-Corruption to look into that, and that is Brigadier Isoke.
Yes.
Now, first of all, is this the first time the president is seeing these actions happening in elections? Because believe me, you are a Ugandan, you've been following matters of elections. You've seen these erupt. You've seen what did happen in, you know, the by-election that did happen in Omoro, in Serere, where you're seeing government parastatals or government facilities being used to, you know, canvass votes for different candidates, specifically the ruling party, NRM. And this is, you know, kind of in the same situation, kind of same manner, different facts, but then speaking to the same issue of intimidation, voter bribery, using, you know, government machinery. This is not the first time it is happening. Is this the first time the president is seeing such a situation?
You see, you know, for this particular one, I am very happy that he has come out openly and condemned what happened, and then he has sent his team to probe the matter. Of course, looking at the scenario of the previous by-elections or possible elections where there's been, you know, they have been mad with lots of irregularities and then mistreatment and so on. You believe that in that very particular letter, he said he doesn't want things or events that happened in the 1980s. In 80s
specifically, yes.
To specifically repeat themselves. That is history repeating, you know, itself. It is very dangerous for any economy, any growing economy. And for the president to come, of course, everyone is anticipating. Everyone wants to see the level at which the president, you know, will take or reach. But of course, looking at this particular one, of course, I want to believe that he's going to look at harmonizing the two, you know, the two parties that are aggrieved. Of course, we already saw a situation where the candidate that was manhandled or already got into an agreement with the NRM, you know, function. And of course, that shows you the level of unit. That shows you the level of professionalism, possibly that could have, you know, that was run behind the scenes. That the particular candidate coming on board and then accepting that this and this happened. Let's leave this out.
You see why I'm smiling.
Of course, there's room for there's room for reconciliation. In diplomacy, there's always situations that have caused, you know, diverse situations, or rather kicked in and brought in harmful, you know, situations. But at the end of the day, is that how do you solve the problems? So possibly the president coming out to try and probe into the matter is also looking at the irregularities, how there was pre-ticking of ballot, you know, papers, because there was already a complaint laid by not only one candidate, but also the FDC fraternity and those other candidates.
Mr. Tim,
yes.
Instead of solving the problem, why don't we stop the problem from occurring? Because, you know, let us look at prevention. and leave out on cure, because I would say prevention is better than cure. It is a saying that we do get from even school way below in primary school, and prevention does of course stay better than cure. Why doesn't the NRM government look at preventing these issues from happening? Pre-ticking of ballot papers, this is something that has been mentioned over different by-elections. Even in the general elections, it is one point that is brought about, but then it continues to happen. It is not the first time. Case in point, the election that we did have in LC5 election, that was around the Jinja, one of the places in Jinja in there, and that is where the NEP candidate Nakwede did go to court of law. If you were aware of the happenings in that by-election, similar to this exact by-election in Wikedea, it is same thing happening, evolving every now and then.
No, you see, one thing that I think we as possibly, one thing that NRM has to do, or possibly government, is to try and streamline on policies that are governing, these particular elections and so on. And that is now to put to task Electoral Commission. There's always been an initiative to isolate and then make Electoral Commission an independent body.
So is it independent?
Being part of part of I think the judiciary or something, has always been affecting how it runs, because you understand the type of people that have always been appointed to handle elections.
Yeah.
So first and foremost is for us to rather put these institutions to become independent to handle politics, and then also, of course, I don't know how we're going to do it, but to deviate, particular individuals invest in politics. It's now like a business. I've come with my 1 billion, or I've come with my 500 million, and then I want to contest for an elective position. And of course, that's now talking about commercialization of politics. We as a country have to regulate on commercialization of politics. Money should not be one of the key points people should look at. You see, when you look at our areas, anyone can come and contest, as long as people see that you have a capacity. But of recent, there has been a certain kind of mindset that has been brought about. If you don't have the capacity financially, then you are not suitable to be a member of parliament, or you're not suitable to be a leader. However much you have the information, and however much you are well equipped, however much you have been mentored or passed through these systems, possibly these influential leaders, you have been together with them, you've helped to build them up and so on, and people believe that you can equally serve as a member of parliament or serve as a leader in a district. They will not give you capacity if you don't have the monies. Unlike your area, your region, I've already done my assessment and so on. I'm told that they will even ask you, the individuals themselves who are going to help you to campaign will ask you, say, how much are you putting in?
And of course, money has, of course, been a factor in Ugandan politics as we speak now. I would say for the past, how many years it has been a factor. But how does this, play out in the effect on, how voters are represented in parliament, how services are delivered? How does this affect in the long run?
Of course, you see, when anyone uses their own resources to get into parliament, that becomes a problem. Because first and foremost is that I have invested in this election, possibly I've used my own savings, 500 million or whatever amounts of money, and then I have to recover it.
Yeah, true.
So my concentration will be, how am I recovering that money? So in the process of you recovering the money, of course, the people that you are representing might not feel the effect. Because how are your lobby skills? You're a member of parliament, you have to sacrifice. By the time you accepted to contest and lead people, that was already a level of sacrificing. That is one thing.
Ready to sacrifice.
So they're ready to sacrifice. So by the time you see that particular candidates have deserted their constituencies possibly for the last 2 years, we always interact with them. Some have said that I have not been in my constituency. I always go there. I go there at night. Very early in the morning, I am out of the constituencies because it's fearing. Some of these people live beyond their budgets or live beyond their means. You'll find that even if a member of parliament is earning 30 million, That money, first of all, is servicing possibly a mortgage or a loan that he picked.
In fact, for the past few weeks, we've had different members of parliament being arrested
Yes,
by money lenders due to
over money-related issues. So that shows you the level of crisis or other issues that are facing them as members of parliament. Of course, you can't infringe into their rights. They have the right to do whatever they want. But of course, this, is a kind of platform to guide them. We are in the next 2 years, possibly I think 2023. By 2024, you already should be on ground campaigning for the next, term. That is 2026 to and above. That needs money. But then you have engaged, possibly you have gone and then possibly got a mortgage of 1 billion shillings and so on. And even if you are to calculate the amount of money these people, pick in one particular term, is less than 3 billion.
True.
So now, how much money are you going to invest in the next election? Because you have different individuals possibly who have also been into business. They have also been saving for that particular instance. They are not going to come and possibly debt-ridden like you. For them, they are coming when they are fresh. That I have this particular, I'm going to put it there. Come and buy. So they are ready. I have one particular candidate. He wants to contest in one of the districts in Teso sub-region. He called me and he told me that I want to meet you. I have seen the way you have always participated in the previous elections, your mobilization skills, and so on and so on. I want us to meet. And now in the meeting is that I want you to guide me on how we can, strategize on how we can win this particular place. And of course, when he comes around, I will give him whatever that he needs to hear, both the good and the bad. So it is for him to choose. I've also already met some other candidates. Some are going to contest in Namotumba, and I think some other, areas within Bukedi sub-region. And I sat with them. I discussed with them. I gave them, a proper lineup of how things are run in elective politics. We talked about the money, the money issues, the money factor, and so on. So some of these scenarios of having money on board is what betrays most of the candidates. The particular issue of Bukedia by-election is that there possibly was a kind of information that leaked that that candidate had money hidden somewhere. And your own people that are money hungry will betray you.
But of course, this is being, put onto officials that could be affiliated to government or maybe security operatives.
No, but you can also see but you can also see how the candidate, first of all, having those issues happening in Bukedia, and then the particular candidate that was affected was even manhandled on the day when he was going for nominations. You saw how they embarrassed him by tearing his clothes and so on, confiscating his documents and beating him. The same candidate even went up to Nairobi for treatment, and he's still getting treatment. He's bedridden. The same candidate could not report the case in Bukedia, within the Bukedia security system. Now, this is where you question the type of security that was there. What was the role of the DPC in handling the matter? What was the role of the RDC, who heads the security committee?
Mr. Tim, before we blame the RDC, DPC, in the 2021 general elections, Honorable Patrick Oboy Amuriat did come for nominations barefoot. You did see that. That did, of course, erupt by him running a barefoot campaign. For example, we did see the party president of NUP being whisked away by security operatives just after nominations, on the nomination grounds, being manhandled and whisked away. This is, of course, coming from security operatives who are here in Kampala, the headquarters of different security operatives. Even before we blame the DPC in Bukedia in there, shouldn't we start by the ones that are here on top?
Of course, you see, by the time you see the heads of state lining up and drafting such a probe and entrusting his one of the most favorable anti-corruption unit to handle such and probe into the matter, is to show you that he has already spoken about it. He says he's tired and fed up of these events. But he's already seeing how it is going. Because in the next election, 2026, I want to assure you, my brother, here today, and let the viewers
be the
I'm putting it
judges
on record.
when the day comes. Yes.
2026 is going to be the bloodiest election we have had. Because first of all, you're going to see that. I mean, first of all, let's look at the unemployment, rate. It's alarming. I have personally interacted with a lot of individuals. Possibly I don't want to show face right now, but I want to assure you that they are coming. And these are young, able-bodied, men.
Individuals, yeah.
Young men, individuals that have the capacity. Possibly they have some bits of money that they have got, and they are going to various places. So we meet as young people. Possibly you are in a social gathering, or possibly in one particular office also. But I want to tell you that we are going to have the highest number of individuals contesting in this coming election, and if not properly handled, and policies governing elections, if they're not streamlined properly, we're going to have a very, the bloodiest election we have ever had.
Mr. Tim, let us speak some of the solutions. How do we start to, uproot the money factor in the politics of the nation?
Well, by now, you see, what we have to do, first of all, is to make sure that we leave Electoral Commission as a body to handle issues independently.
It says it has been handling them independently.
No, it has not been handling, because they are affiliated people. Let me tell you, there are people that have a upper hand. And me, I don't like this thing of finger pointing and identifying people to run particular offices. That is where the dilemma is. If you're to keenly follow what is happening, the people that have handled, in any previous elections, we always have people that are delegated to oversee and handle particular areas. These are finger pointers that say you handle here, because they understand the kind of person or character they are sending to that area, and they understand the geopolitics of that area. So when you see certain events happening, it's because the characters of the people that are involved in this. We have candidates that have been contesting in those particular positions for let's say 3 elections down. This could be his first time. He has understood how the events have been corresponding, and he will always want to implement or rather apply a certain mechanism so that he can come out. Aggressiveness in how you handle things. They use the money, of course, use the machineries from any parastatals, or rather from any security
agencies,
systems or agencies. That is how elections have always been handled.
Okay, Mr. Tim, finally, as we try to conclude here,
yes.
There is a narrative. Has the president written the letter that was just put on screen there to tamper or try to put a stampede on different individuals in the National Resistance Movement Party who are seemingly growing more wings and can influence politics in their different constituencies?
But on that aspect, I want to believe that the president has always known how to handle his his people, those that work together with him. And I want to believe that as the head of state, possibly is following up on a complaint from a particular candidate, or rather the candidates that participated in this by-election. And now, when you are to look at this, and then you are to look at how it can affect NRM's performance, not only in that particular district, but in other districts, it's alarming. It is not something very simple to do. So, as NRM, possibly has identified, and I want to believe that he has picked intelligence from not only NRM as a party, but he has picked intelligence from all his security teams that he sent to do a verification. By the time this probe is already been put in place, there is already intelligence the president has picked from different aspects. He's picked intelligence, and he understands, he knows where the main problem is.
Okay.
But he will handle it. He's a man that he has never failed to handle his aspects. Remember, there was some time ago, there was a crisis in the NRM secretariat where some big wings or other people had wanted to rather use it
influence the politics in there.
Yes, everyone had wanted to use, some individuals had wanted to use the NRM secretariat as a build-up force to project their ambitions. But how did he do it? He only cut off a little privileges. That is what he always does. So even in this possibly 1-2 month, he will be having facts.
So this shouldn't be considered as trying to threaten or trying to show some of those big wings that he is on ground, and of course is trying to look into all those matters that are not to influence elections, because they are not supposed to be doing that. It is a matter that should be left to the people that are voting.
Of course, he can. You see, the president is a very unpredictable man. He can use this as one among the many to pass a lesson to the rest of the people that are working with him. Yes, that's how he does things.
Do we see
he will single it, but I'm foreseeing something that is most likely going to happen.
What is that?
First is that the particular people affected will have to sit in a dialogue with him.
Okay.
Of course, there's going to be reconciliation, but he is also trying to rather cut any future issues or scenarios that might occur, because you see today that happening, you don't know what the next candidates can easily plan. Like I told you, it's going to become bloody. Everyone is going to come with the capacity of I'm putting my money and it is me, I have to win. So if it has been happening in Bukadia, it happened the other time, it is again happened today, what do you think can happen? What do you think can occur?
Definitely.
And possibly you're looking at these particular candidates, all of them have a following. Don't think that the other individual, the other particular candidates, the followers of the other candidate are happy with what happened. Of course, that can affect the voter, how the votes, the party votes in the next election.
Mr. Tim, as we conclude, yes. We just have a few minutes to leave the set. Yes. Do we see democracy in Uganda thriving? Because looking at all these discussions we are having here, looking at the by-elections that have happened, how vehicles that do belong to government are used in the elections, covered number plates from Omoro to Serere, seeing all those activities happening, we anticipating that maybe it could be the same thing happening here, since we did see some of those other parastatals being used in the Bukadia by-election. Do we see democracy playing out for the betterness of all Ugandans?
Democracy. How do we view democracy? Because you see, democracy is giving you the freedom and the role to literally practice and of course share the same platform on a free and fair will. Of course, you see, when you talk about democracy, we should also look at the type of government systems that you particularly advocating for democracy. Democracy, you should see that there's been a level of tolerance by this particular government.
Okay.
Even if it is a kind of militarized in how it handles issues, but it has been a level of democracy to a certain high level, to a certain capacity, and of course giving you the platform, rather leverage to do whatever you are doing. It should also not give you room to think that you are above the law.
But you see, the Constitution speaks about freedom of expression.
There's freedom of expression, because you can literally come here and blast so and so. That's freedom of expression.
But as that,
but in any government system, including where the main senior advocates of democracy in the whole world, as the United States, there is always expression. But after the expression, what happens?
Anyway,
because you can't come here and then you think that you are going to express your views in a kind of a rude or rudimentary method, and then you expect people to just dance by your tunes. Of course, that's a lie. If I'm coming here either to criticize a certain initiative or system, both positive and negative. Yes, and it is for their own good. So when we talk about democracy, the democratic systems or methods being used. You've always seen Uganda has always been through a democratic kind of state. But then we don't want a certain level or a certain scenario where we have certain states, or rather those superpowers coming to ride on democracy to try and corrupt our mindsets and try and infringe on our sovereignty as states or as nations.
Mr. Tim,
we are a sovereign state. We have the rights to do what we want. If it is the democratic kind of system that we're handling, Uganda has always exhibited that for the past years.
That is, of course, according to what you're saying, Mr. Otim, because I'm sure the people that are viewing could have different divergent issues, but of course that is a topic we shall dwell on maybe next time, because when we speak democracy, it does of course speak to the rule of law. You're saying someone cannot express themselves in a rude manner, but of course when we speak freedom of expression, someone has a right to express themselves. So that is an issue we will continue to look into. Of course,
it's a big topic.
It's a big, very, very big topic. Yes. Well, I think we'll call it quits here on BTM Daybreak. My name is Bruce Mugabe. We do appreciate your company, and of course, that was a discussion we did hold for you today. We expect elections in Oyam North to take place on Thursday.
And NRM is winning.
We don't know that yet, but we'll be seeing what will be happening, because all the candidates seem strong. The last day of campaigning is today. President Robert Kyagulanyi was in there yesterday. President Museveni is expected to also be there today. Good morning.
This is BTM. We transform. Up next on BTM. This is BTM. We transform.